If we could tell the story of Tucson, what would we say? Who's telling our stories? Can we really see a path forward into our future if we don't have the context of where we've already been?
My heart is yours, Lord, in the morning. Oh Lord, my heart is yours. My heart is yours, Lord, for the making. Oh
City Psalms was an idea born out of a desire to see the kingdom of God come in our city. I think a big part of the process has been looking back at what our city has faced over the course of its history, what kinds of issues it's overcome and how they've been overcome. And the surprising good news that the church actually has been good news to the city over the course of its history and loved and cared for. As we look at moving forward, we get inspiration by looking at those stories of just how we have been able to follow the lead of Jesus in the past, and that gives us inspiration to do it for the future. I think the music piece is a key of looking forward. It's a vision casting element to write songs about who we hope to be.
what the future holds, but we know that we can trust in you. Oh, make this city your home.
The end result, the good news, I think, should be that Tucson would be a good place for people. That's how you would know that the Spirit of God was here and that it was changing people and transforming people, is that it would become a good place for people.
We're all just branches on the vine. We are one body and one mind. You long to see church unite, 'cause we're all just branches on the vine. We're all just branches on the vine.
We really wanted to see the same kind of unity on a broad level in Tucson that we saw developing at our annual pastor prayer summits, where pastors from all across our community met together for 3 days with the sole purpose of praying together for our city. At those prayer summits, we would pray, but we would also share stories. And the question came up often, who is telling our stories? We need to share our stories. So we realized that prayers for our future have to be connected in some way to how God has moved in the past, because when we're praying for the future, we're relying on God's character and His nature. And we learn those things from His Word, but we see them in action with how He responds and how He leads in the past. And that's the faith-building movement that helps propel us to pray forward.
We just want to love you right, 'cause we're all just branches on the vine.
So tonight is our first attempt at an art exhibit. So this thing that you're walking into is, we are stumbling along the way of trying to figure this out, but it is beautiful, isn't it? Yeah. The artists are incredible. We recruited a bunch of artists who their assignment was to take, if you haven't gotten this information, there are 8 stories from our spiritual history, going as far back as Father Kino, and then into the 1870s when the Protestant Reformation finally made its way into the Tucson area and those first churches came, and then from there until about 1920, 1930. So, and these artists, they were tasked to look through these stories and then pick the one that they were most inspired by, and then create an expression of prayer for Tucson's future inspired by that story from the past. So when you're walking through this exhibit, you're walking through prayers expressed for Tucson's future, inspired by these great stories of how God has moved in the past. Is that cool? Yeah.
It was a very pleasant experience to see how many other people had picked up on the influences of men that we hardly ever hear of. And I suppose Kino might be one of the more visible ones, seeing he has a statue here in the city. Kino was a peacemaker and a humanitarian. He brought fruit trees and grains into these valleys. He brought many blessings to this country. Long after he died, the influence of Kino lived on. Jesus Christ was presented to the native people in a loving fashion. Kino was nothing of a salesman. He was a sincere man who loved God, loved people, and as a consequence, his memory just has, well, it's not died. I don't think his influence has been appreciated. And I think that it's worth, if people want to enjoy Tucson and the cultures here, I think the place to start is to get better acquainted with our history.
So here's this kid who's living in Italy, and he's on the fast track. He's of influence and affluence. He's in the best school, and he's brilliant. And they're grooming him up for these incredible purposes. And all of a sudden, he gets sick. And it's on his deathbed that he makes this commitment to the Lord, that if God would heal him, he would serve him forever. And God healed him. And that's how the gospel was brought into southern Arizona.
My name is Matt Schrader. We're here at Painted Swirl Studios, and I'm getting a tattoo of Father Kino. And to be honest, I never thought I would be face down getting a tattoo of Father Kino.
So I was tagged in a Facebook post regarding a project that had to do with Christian artists. And for me, the obvious choice was Father Kino. And I put a Facebook post if anyone had a connection to Father Kino. And Pastor Matt responded.
Father Kino was, he was amazing. Just to think that he felt called and led to evangelize in this area. You hungry? And what a privilege it is that we get to live out that calling in the present day, that we get to carry on the spiritual heritage of the foundation that Father Kino laid in this area. What's going on?
I just got liver cancer.
Liver cancer. Uh-huh. Well, I'd like to pray for that. Father Kino was known for his coming through here in the 1600s. He was a missionary. And so we're kind of representing the modern day, living out the prayers that he prayed for this area and doing the street evangelism. Oh, Holy Ghost, give him that healing touch right now. Yes, complete wholeness, Lord. It's an amazing calling. It's an amazing thing to be allowed to be an answer to prayers like people like Father Kino and to live out the spiritual heritage that was planted here so many years ago.
For me, I feel like one of the most impactful things about the story of Father Kino was just that he just used what he had. He was into like mapping and exploring, and he was a rancher, so he knew how to grow crops and make food from wheat, and that's what he taught the native people that he came in contact with. And I think a lot of times as Christians, we feel like for us to be significant, we have to be like preaching to the masses or leading some huge ministry or something like that. But God just calls us to steward what we have and what He's put in front of us.
Father Kino had a lot of struggles, and he had a lot of work to do, and he certainly helped a lot of people. So in putting together the song, I kept with the kind of Southwest motif The sound that I pulled together in this one uses two-note voicings, evoking sorrow, evoking happiness, evoking a really driving feel. Father Kino spent a lot of years traveling across the desert working with people, really helping them. And that kind of committed lifestyle that he had is something that I wanted the sound to drive. It's amazing that Father Kino would have ridden through all of this area. So the distances here in the Altar Valley are what's really impressive. They say that Father Kino had something like 50,000 square miles that he was to be in care of. That kind of connection really is what began to stabilize this whole area. This whole part of the Southwest began seeing the influence of Father Kino in terms of having stabilized food sources, the cattle trade. What's most inspiring to me about Father Kino was his ability to work within what was to him a foreign land, but how he managed to traverse such huge distances in dedication to the people. That becomes the idea that drives giving to others, knowing that hundreds of years before it would have been Father Kino that was up here. It really is inspirational. It really does give a perspective on life and the time that we have and how to use it.
I think that DeGrazia's connection with Father Kino came from the fact that Father Kino was very, very kind to the Indians.
The significance that Father Kino brought to the area was his delight of the people. He baptized thousands of people. He established 21 missions within the Sonoran area.
Well, Father Kino passed away, and it was about 50 years later that the Jesuit priests left the region, the Franciscan priests came in, and that set the stage for Father Garces.
He loved every person he met. They loved him. He had a charisma that really brought the people into the church.
So Juan Bautista de Anza, who's a commander over at the military presidio at Tubac, saw a strategic opportunity to build a presidio in the Tucson area, which is right at the base of a mountain. But he knew in order to have that happen, he had to have the agreement of the native people here. And he knew that the best person to be able to negotiate that was Father Garces, because of Father Garces' relationship with the Native Americans in the area. So Father Garces approached the Native Americans with the idea of the presidio, and they were in agreement with it on the one condition, and that one condition was that a church was built. And that is the genesis of our city, Tucson. It became Presidio San Agustin de Tucson.
Okay, so I chose the Sisters of Carondelet because, one, they're women. I wanted to know what the hardships they had to endure were, and I just felt that they embodied this pioneering spirit that I think Christ wants us to have at all times. They climbed over mountains, they climbed over territories, they faced danger at every step. They trusted God even when they didn't know what was going to happen the next day.
If we have been shown compassion, let us love the same. Measure out as we are measured.
I chose to put a dress on to relate somewhat to what they were experiencing with the restrictions that a dress has when you're trying to move through the desert. They didn't know what they were getting into, and I wanted to come also out into the desert without knowing what I was getting into in terms of how I was going to move around water, tugging, pulling. They did not back down from the request. That was a really difficult request. So the Sisters of Carondelet, their statement is that they're Christ's reconciling presence in the world, serving the dear neighbor. And I think that's a beautiful statement. That's basically all we are here, you know, to reconciliation. There's only one ministry. There's not a lot of ministries. It's reconciliation with Christ, and we're to serve our neighbors. What was the heart of these women? More than what are all the facts that are presented in books. I want a heart like theirs.
The Sisters of Carondelet were brought in by Bishop Salpointe to establish education and medicine, bring medicine with them, and as a result of their coming in, the women or the young girls of Tucson were educated for the first time.
I named the painting From Ashes, and in a sense, you know, Tucson came up from the ashes. It had this rebirth once they did what they did. Starting schools and, you know, hospitals, and just really fundamental in the growth of Tucson.
I love how this particular one is coming right out of the fire and going up into the corn planting and the different parts to their story. And I used a crooked, jagged plant that's still green and fruitful to represent just the difficulty of growing.
After the arrival of the Southern Pacific Railroad, many of the railroad workers would be injured. And so the sisters saw this, took the need to Bishop Salpointe, and he was able to create St. Mary's Hospital. And 2 years later, he gave ownership of St. Mary's Hospital over to the sisters.
This is a song that myself and Micah wrote. It is about Bishop Salpointe, so I hope you enjoy. This song is called Apache. Yeah, that sounds sweet. Yeah, it'd be cool, like, cause if we just kind of hung on that beat, like the boom, 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 and then kind of switch it up right here. Yeah. There you go. Okay, yeah. All right, let's do the whole thing again.
He came a long way down from what he knew. Salpointe, the man that God chose to use.
So like lyrically, what are you thinking? Where do you want this to come
So
out?
it basically starts out with, he came a long way down from what he knew. Salpointe, the man that God chose to use, he finds himself inside a carriage, traveling on a road far from home, thinking of being in that carriage, knowing the danger that's ahead of you, but knowing that God has called you. Man, I really feel like I need to go and I need to do this, but at the same time, like your flesh is like, what? No, I don't want to go. Like, you know, like.
1, 2, 3, 4, 'cause I've been waiting for the hearts to wake. I've been waiting for the hearts to wake to turn to you.
The chorus is, because I've been waiting for the hearts to wake. I've been waiting for the hearts to wake to turn to you. And basically that's like the life of a priest.
Yeah,
like
he's feeling called to like.
He's feeling called to people, and it's the commitment to a people.
For you. For you.
Thank you.
So in 1870, around the same time that the Sisters of Carondelet made their arrival into Tucson, the Protestant Reformation, which was expanding all throughout the world, had officially come to Tucson as well.
The first Protestant influences in this area were actually street preachers who came from the East and came here to save souls in this rugged frontier city that was just out in the Wild West.
Protestant churches first came into this area probably in the late 1800s. Because there were no buildings, they met in the courthouse or the city halls.
And by 1890, those congregations had a full membership of about 250 people.
These congregations were gathering places for believers to come together and encourage each other to share the gospel in the community and be salt and light.
So we have visual art that's been contributed, and tonight we're going to have an example of spoken word art from Myra Duran.
Okay, so I chose to write about Josephine B. Hughes. So I chose to write about Josephine B. Hughes. She's also known as the Mother of Arizona. She fought for women's rights, beginning with establishing the first public school for girls, becoming a teacher herself. She also ran the Arizona Daily Star, and 8 years before Congress established a nationwide movement for women to vote, Josephine and her son had given women 8 years before the 19th Amendment the right to vote here in our state. What captured my heart was that first and foremost she was a mom, that she journeyed here with a shotgun in one hand and an infant in another. And that's when I was like, this is the one. I have to know more about her. Dear Josephine, I am walking in your dreams. Forgive me for taking your strife for granted. You are evidence as to why God allows our lives to taste hardship. Because hardship is the very antidote necessary to move mountains. Josephine, I am astounded by your story, your aim, and precision. I would like to think that if you were here, you would not pass me the baton, rather a shotgun, and teach me how to lock and load my convictions, make use of my depression, cock back this righteous anger. And that's my prayer for this city, is that more rise with the same determination, that more rise with the same passion, wrapped with the fierce humility, to abolish the injustices of our generation.
And that is my prayer for this city, is that we all rise with the same determination, with the same passion, with the same dreams. That is my prayer for this city.
So I was struck by Oliver Comstock's compassion. I kind of refer to Oliver Comstock as a Mother Teresa of Tucson. I started doing some research online as to what flowers represent compassion, and I found that the peony oftentimes represents compassion. He really had a heart for the poor. He had a heart for people who were marginalized by their disease. What I found is that the Comstock Children's Foundation was still in existence. I went in and spoke to Judith, who runs the foundation.
That's the original Comstock Children's Hospital.
After that, I was put in touch with Rebecca Lieberman, who was also inspired by Oliver Comstock. And that was really fun to get to share our emotional impact that we had by researching Oliver.
A lot of times I would think about what he sacrificed, and he was willing to put his well-being aside, because we know tuberculosis is highly contagious.
Well, Oliver Comstock actually lost 2 of his children to tuberculosis, so obviously it was very near and dear to his heart. He would ride through Tent City on a bicycle, and he had mutton chop sideburns and circular glasses, and the sight of him bringing food and clothing and other aid to the people of Tent City was absolutely welcomed by them.
I'm going to have, as soon as I get to this area, will be the people walking into the city. And Comstock will be viewing the people walking in the city. And of course, they're walking all to go to one place and be united, and that's to go to fellowship. If today we would have more of us walking in the light of Oliver E. Comstock, our little city would be built up with a strong foundation, a firm foundation.
The group that he ministered to in Tent City were really treated almost like lepers. It was a scary time, I think, for Tucson. Tuberculosis was a really contagious disease, and people who were healthy didn't want to be anywhere near people who had tuberculosis. This particular variety, while it's a white peony, it has very deep little segments of sort of a scarlet or crimson red. That was a bit of a metaphor for people who had tuberculosis and would actually cough up blood. So I wanted to incorporate the red sort of down into these congested areas. He saw all these people really suffering in Tent City, some of which even committed suicide because they had no hope. And he provided a sense of hope for them. He ministered to them not only spiritually, but he ministered to them physically and emotionally. It probably took a couple days after I read his biography before I could really even talk about it to people without getting really emotional. I would have loved to have met him. Oliver Comstock will inspire us to be more compassionate and to show the love of Christ to the community in a much broader, much more visible way, and to go out of our way to do that.
For tuberculosis victims, there was Oliver Comstock. And for Oliver Comstock, there was Harold Bell Wright.
Harold Bell Wright wrote several books and became a very significant author of his time frame. His more memorable books was Shepherd in the Hills.
He was drawn to Tucson because he was going to die. He contracted tuberculosis, and so this was the logical destination. But something amazing happened, and he didn't. And in that period, he published a written work for the American magazine that circulated all throughout the United States, and the title of it was Why I Didn't Die. And it espoused Tucson as being this destination, a health resort destination in our nation, and became wildly popular.
We surrender all. We surrender all to follow you. To follow you into fear.
The thing that's amazing to me about Harold Bell Wright is he leveraged his influence as a writer for the kingdom. I mean, he used his books and turned them into screenplays and productions that were used downtown in downtown Tucson, and he brought A-list actors and actresses from Hollywood, and they put these productions together, and all the proceeds, every single penny of the proceeds, went toward creating sustainable health care for everyone in our city.
There's a building where we all meet, reading words that Jesus preached. There is room for all in these four walls to go out on the street, bring the outcast and all in need to the banquet hall of these four walls. We hear you on the wind. Yeah, we belong.
My prayer is that I won't forget this a few months after this event is over and the pictures are put away, that we won't go back to business as usual. But I'll find a way to keep in my heart and mind the fact that Tucson is a community. It's not just a city. Perhaps we haven't felt as much a part of the community as we could. Perhaps by making prayer a concerted effort and participating, maybe I'll gain a little bit of that community feeling back.
I was also really challenged to be praying for the city more, to remember we're all one body here in Tucson and here in our church body. Ways that we can engage with God through worship, through art. I think that is really close to my heart.
I really want to serve my Creator God. I don't want to mess around in life. I want to be very significant in my life.
One person can make a difference. And so if you feel the Holy Spirit moving you to do something, you should do it. Because the actions I take or the actions you take can affect people for generations to come.
You know, after doing this, I just feel like our heart just has to be so connected to God and to the Holy Spirit, or we won't step out. We won't take risks with our lives. I'd like to stand before God someday and be able to say I did something, anything, that would help my dear neighbor.